Hello, and welcome to the vlogging pod. There is a lot coming out of Minnesota right now, and unless your head has been buried in the sand, you know exactly what I'm talking about. What's happening there isn't a single incident, it isn't just another headline to scroll past. Minnesota has become a convergence point where federal immigration enforcement, state resistance, data control, and public accountability are colliding all at once. Over the past several weeks, federal immigration forces have surged into Minneapolis under what's being described as a coordinated enforcement operation. State and local leaders have challenged this in court, arguing that what's happening goes beyond cooperation into coercion. That alone would be significant, but as more information surfaced, it's become clear this wasn't just about policy or jurisdiction. It was about how these operations were being carried out on the ground. One of the earliest incidents that drew attention was the shooting of a woman with the last name Good, who was shot while sitting in her car during a federal enforcement action. The circumstances surrounding that incident raised immediate questions about escalation, use of force, and accountability in civilian spaces. As that incident was still being processed, additional cases began coming to light. Two of those involved a very young children. In one case, a 5-year-old was taken into federal custody along with his father in Minnesota and transported to a family immigration detention facility in Texas. A federal judge later intervened, placing limits on further transfer or removal while the case proceeds. In another case, a 2-year-old was detained with her father and placed on a flight out of the state. Despite a judicial order directing that the toddler be released, the child was later returned to family custody in Minnesota while the father remained detained. These children were not physically harmed, and the distinction matters. But harm does not require physical injury to be real. Detention, forced transport across state lines, and family separation carry lasting consequences, and they are central to why these cases resonated so widely. Then came the unaliving of Alex Preddy. Video footage became circulating almost immediately with multiple angles analyzed across platforms. Early official statements suggested a threat, but the available video evidence showed something very different. Preddy was a legal carrying firearm. It remained holstered. Footage shows agents removing the weapon from him. Public statements for the administration then shifted toward arguing that he should not have been carrying a gun at all. That response matters because it cuts directly into one of the most protected political doctrines in this country, the Second Amendment. For years, the right to bear arms has been defended aggressively, particularly by Republicans. When the right collides with federal immigration enforcement, it suddenly becomes conditional. The contradiction has created visible fractures with more conservative voices beginning to push back, not necessarily over immigration policy, but over precedent. At the same time, reports circulated that Gregory Bovino, a senior Border Patrol official associated with the operation, was being reassigned or removed. That narrative gained traction, then was disputed, then partially confirmed, then reframed. Once again, what appeared to be accountability blurred into something less clear. The pattern repeats, outrage rises, hope flickers, and authority reasserts itself. Overlaying all of this is a quieter but deeply consequential fight over data. Attorney General Pam Bondi sent a letter to Minneapolis leadership demanding access to voter-related data, with implications that the federal enforcement resources could be withdrawn if cooperation was granted. Minnesota pushed back. Ohio, by contrast, has an arrangement with the state, retains control of its data, and responds to federal inquiries through state-controlled channels. That difference matters. One is structured cooperation, the other looks like leverage. In Congress, the response has followed a similar pattern. Statements, regret, promises of future action. 7 House Democrats voted for the DH funding bill, and a few have now come out publicly expressing regret over the vote as the consequences have become clearer. Calls to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem have grown louder, with the pressure coming from both sides of the aisle. And yet, even as that momentum builds, the head of this administration met with her privately and then publicly reaffirmed full support the very next day. Once again, accountability talks, runs up against executive backing, and the balance of power holds. Most people don't respond until something affects them directly. That's not an accusation, it's an observation. And for many, Minnesota is that moment. It's far enough removed from the border and far enough removed from years of distorted narratives around immigration that the consequences now feel unavoidable. It's not because harm hasn't occurred before. It has, including within immigration detention itself, where there has been documented loss of life. But now, because this is Minnesota and because the faces involved are more familiar, the pattern has become harder to dismiss. And that raises a larger question. Is this truly about immigration enforcement? Or is it about who controls election-related data? Who defines rights? And when Constitution protects, apply, and when they quietly disappear? Is the Second Amendment now another protection that fades when it becomes inconvenient, joining a growing list of constitutional guarantees that seem conditional rather than absolute? And is that why Minnesota matters so much right now? Because of the belief still held there that the Constitution is not optional, that rights are not situational, that some lines should not be crossed no matter justification? If that's the case, then what's unfolding in Minnesota isn't just a local story. It's a test. Today's sources come from federal agents detained 5-year-old boy in Minnesota, taken to Texas with father, Associated Press. Agents detained and sent 2-year-old girl and her father to Texas despite court order to release toddler, Star Tribune. Minneapolis becomes ground zero in Trump immigration crackdown, arrests, protests, and shootings, CBS News. Minnesota protest after Alexa Prentice shooting as immigration raids escalate, The Guardian. House Democrats voted for a DH funding bill, now say regret. Time. Bondi presses Minnesota for voter data amid immigration enforcement standoff, The Washington Post. Thank you for listening. Until next time, bye-bye for now.